Samantha Walsh stood at the viewport of the Galactic Council Research Station, watching the swirling blue-green planet below. Her reflection showed a confident smile, but inside, her stomach churned with nervous energy. In her 15 years as a xenobiologist, she had never faced an audience quite like this. The station's corridors buzzed with activity as aliens of various species hurried past. Some walked on multiple legs, others floated on gravity devices, but they all shared one trait. They gave the viewport a wide berth, avoiding even a glimpse of the watery world below. "Dr. Walsh, they're ready for you," said the station's AI through her earpiece. Samantha straightened her blue uniform and grabbed her data tablet. The presentation she was about to give would change everything. The conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Hundreds of eyes, some with multiple pupils, others with protective membranes, turned to watch her enter. The circular chamber held representatives from 27 spacefaring species, and not one of them looked comfortable. At the center podium, Zixtal, the Nautilian chief scientist, waved a tentacle in greeting. His species, despite their aquatic-sounding name, came from a desert world and shared the common galactic fear of water-covered planets. His gray skin glistened under the soft lights as he introduced her. "We welcome Dr. Samantha Walsh of Earth, here to present her findings on human aquatic colonization," Zixtal announced, his translator converting his clicks into standard galactic speech. "Though we must note that many of us find the subject matter disturbing." Samantha activated her holoprojector. A three-dimensional image of Earth filled the room, its ocean sparkling. Several delegates visibly flinched. "Thank you, Chief Scientist Zixtal," she began. "For centuries, the Galactic Council has classified water-covered planets as death worlds. Today, I'm here to show you why humans see them differently." She swiped through her presentation, showing images of Earth's marine life. Humans evolved on a planet that is 70% water. Our ancestors came from the oceans, and even now, we carry that heritage in our bodies. A Vexillian delegate raised a spindly arm. "You expect us to believe your species willingly returns to such dangerous environments? The pressure alone would crush any reasonable life form." Samantha nodded, expecting this reaction. "Actually, we've established 17 deep-sea colonies in the past decade alone. The deepest sits at 3,000 meters below sea level on Europa, one of our solar system's ice moons." The room erupted in chittering and buzzing sounds of disbelief. Zixtal's tentacles curled in agitation. "Dr. Walsh, perhaps there has been a translation error. You're suggesting your people live under 3 kilometers of water." "Not just live," Samantha replied, bringing up new images. "We work, research, and thrive there. Our children are born in underwater cities, protected by shields and pressure systems that work with the ocean instead of against it." The images showed human children playing in underwater observation domes, scientists working in deep-sea laboratories, and hydroponic farms flourishing in pressurized chambers. "Impossible," shouted a Meridian observer, their crystalline form vibrating with emotion. "No species would willingly subject themselves to such conditions." Samantha took a deep breath. This was the crucial moment. "I invite any of you to visit our colonies. See for yourselves how we've turned these death worlds into new frontiers of discovery and innovation." The room fell silent. Zixtal floated forward, his tentacles swaying thoughtfully. "Dr. Walsh, while your presentation is fascinating, you must understand our perspective. Every spacefaring race in the Council evolved on worlds where water covered less than 20% of the surface. Our civilizations developed avoiding large bodies of water, not embracing them." "I understand completely," Samantha replied. "That's exactly why we believe humans can help. We can bridge this gap. Think of the resources, the scientific discoveries, the potential for expansion that water worlds offer. All we need is the courage to dive in." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The universe is vast, but we've all been avoiding 70% of potentially habitable planets. Humanity is ready to help the Council access these worlds. We can teach you, guide you, help you overcome these fears." The silence stretched on until a young Centaurian scientist stood up. I would like to visit one of these colonies," they said, their voice trembling but determined. Samantha smiled. It was a start. One brave soul willing to challenge millennia of ingrained fear. As more delegates began to cautiously raise their hands or appendages to express interest, she knew the tide was turning. The galaxy was about to change, one drop at a time. Commander Peter Martinez watched through the reinforced viewport as another section of Neptune's Hope colony descended into Europa's dark waters. The massive habitat module, guided by robotic drones, sank slowly through the hole they'd carved in the ice. Clouds of bubbles rose around it as it disappeared into the depths. Behind him, the alien observers made sounds of distress. He turned to face them, noting how they huddled as far from the viewport as possible. Even after 3 months of hosting these Galactic Council representatives, their fear of water still surprised him. "The module is passing 1,000 meters, reported Linda Chen from her control station. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, monitoring the descent. All pressure readings normal. "How can you be so calm?" asked Krax, one of the Meridian observers. The crystalline alien surface flickered with patterns of anxiety. "That structure will be crushed." Peter smiled and gestured to the massive screens showing the module's descent from multiple angles. "Actually, we've copied the design from deep-sea creatures on Earth. The pressure helps hold the structure together, rather than threatening to break it apart." The module's external lights illuminated the dark waters of Europa's ocean, revealing swarms of tiny bioluminescent organisms. Several of the alien observers leaned forward despite themselves, their scientific curiosity temporarily overwhelming their fear. "Life!" exclaimed Zora, a Vexillian biologist, her spindly arms waving in excitement. "Your predictions were correct, Commander. Even here, under the ice. Module has reached target depth of 2,000 meters, Linda announced. Beginning docking sequence with the main colony hub. On the screens, they could see the existing sections of Neptune's Hope colony. Massive circular structures connected by transparent tubes spread out across the ocean floor. Bright lights from the colony created a bubble of artificial day in the eternal darkness of Europa's ocean. Schools of alien microorganisms danced in the light beams, creating shifting patterns of blue and green bioluminescence. The colony currently houses 300 researchers and support staff, Peter explained, pulling up a holographic diagram. With this new residential module, we'll be able to accommodate 500 more colonists, including the first families with children. Children. The word came from multiple alien translators at once, each with its own tone of horror. Peter nodded. Humans adapt quickly, especially young ones. Our studies show that children raised in underwater colonies develop enhanced spatial awareness and a unique understanding of fluid dynamics. They're literally evolving to their environment. The module's docking clamps engaged with a resonating thunk that carried through the ice. Green lights flashed across the control panels, indicating a successful connection. Linda began running pressure tests while maintenance drones swarmed around the seal points. "Would any of you like to tour the colony?" Peter asked, knowing what the answer would be but required by protocol to offer. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Zara stepped forward. I would like to see more of the bioluminescent organisms. For scientific purposes, of course." Peter hid his surprise. This was new. "Of course, we can take one of the smaller submersibles. They're completely safe, with multiple backup systems and emergency protocols." Safe. Krax vibrated with nervous energy. How can anything be safe under 2 kilometers of water? "The same way your ships are safe in the vacuum of space," Peter replied gently. "Through careful engineering and respect for the environment we're working in, the ocean isn't our enemy. It's our new frontier." He pulled up another hologram, this one showing the colony's planned expansion over the next 5 years. Every day, we're learning more about living here. The pressure, the darkness, the isolation. They're all challenges we've turned into opportunities. Those bioluminescent organisms you saw, we're studying them to develop new lighting systems. The pressure. It powers our geothermal generators. Linda's console beeped. Commander, the first colonists are ready to transfer to the new module. Peter watched as the first group of humans, dressed in standard pressure suits despite the enclosed passages, began moving through the connection tubes. They walked confidently, without hesitation, some even stopping to wave at the observation cameras. This is just the beginning, he told the alien observers. Soon, we'll have colonies on every suitable water world in the galaxy. And when your people are ready to join us, we'll be here to show you the way. The aliens watched in silence as more colonists moved into their new home under Europa's ice, their fear slowly giving way to something that looked almost like hope. Lisa Morgan's hands moved quickly across the emergency control panel as warning lights flashed throughout Kepler Colony's main control room. The underwater habitat shook with another tremor, stronger than the last. Deep beneath them, the ocean floor was breaking apart. Status report, she called out, her voice steady despite the crisis. Around her, both human and alien staff monitored their stations, though the alien workers stayed well away from the viewports showing the dark ocean outside. Seismic activity increasing, reported Steve Harris from the geology station. The fault line is spreading. We're looking at potential underwater landslides and pressure changes. Krivax, the alien diplomatic observer, moved his eye stalks in agitation. We must evacuate to the surface immediately. The colony will be crushed. Lisa shook her head, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across her screens. Surface ships can't handle this many people in these conditions. The waves up there are over 50 meters high from the seismic activity. Another tremor rocked the colony. Through the reinforced windows, they could see clouds of sediment rising from the ocean floor, illuminated by the colony's external lights. The view was getting darker as more sediment filled the water around them. All civilian personnel moved to the emergency shelters. Lisa announced over the colony-wide comm system, "This is not an evacuation. I repeat, this is not an evacuation." The alien representatives in the control room stared at her in horror. Not an evacuation. Krivax's translator barely managed to convey his shock. The ocean floor is breaking apart beneath us, and we're going to use that to our advantage, Lisa replied, pulling up a holographic model of the colony. Look here, the seafloor vents are releasing pressure. If we can channel that energy, we can create a buffer zone around the colony. She turned to her engineering team. Redirect power to the external field generators. We're going to ride the currents. Ride the currents. A Meridian observer's crystalline form flickered with panic patterns. That's insane. Our ships are standing by in orbit. We must leave now. But Lisa had already begun implementing her plan. The colony's massive field generators, normally used to maintain stable conditions around the habitat, hummed to life with new programming. Instead of fighting against the ocean's forces, they began working with them. Think of it like surfing, she explained as she worked. We don't try to stop the wave. We use its energy to stay on top of it. Through the viewport, they could see the energy fields shifting, creating channels around the colony's structures. When the next tremor came, the entire habitat moved with it instead of against it, riding the pressure wave like a submarine in a current. Structural integrity holding at 87%, called out Maria from her station. The new field configuration is working. Hours passed as they rode out the seismic event. The alien observers watched in amazement as the human crew calmly handled each new challenge, adjusting their systems to work with the ocean's fury rather than against it. Even when a section of the ocean floor collapsed, creating a massive pressure wave, the colony rode it out safely. Finally, the seismic sensors showed the activity decreasing. The seafloor settled into its new configuration, and the sediment began to clear from the water. All sections reporting in, Steve announced. Minor damage to outer hull plating, but all main structures are intact. No casualties. Lisa let out a long breath and turned to face the alien observers. Their expressions of terror had changed to something closer to awe. "Because we understand something that took us generations to learn," Lisa replied, looking out at the now calming ocean. "Water isn't just a force of destruction. It's fluid, adaptable, always finding a way to flow around obstacles. We survived today because we finally learned to do the same." She brought up the damage reports on the main screen. "We'll need to repair the outer sections and reinforce the foundation, but the colony held. We didn't just survive. We proved that we can handle anything these oceans throw at us." The alien observers huddled together, discussing quietly in their own languages. Finally, Krivak stepped forward. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have been too quick to dismiss water worlds as uninhabitable. Your people have shown us something remarkable today." Lisa smiled. "Then maybe you'd like to help us with the repairs. It's a good first step toward understanding how we do things down here." To her surprise, several of the aliens stepped forward to volunteer. As she began assigning them to repair teams, Lisa realized that sometimes the most powerful force for change wasn't the ocean itself, but the example of those who had learned to call it home. Dr. Alan Patterson pressed his face close to the viewport of the deep-sea research vessel, hardly daring to breathe. In the dark waters of HD 40,307 grams, known to the colonists as Poseidon's Pearl, something extraordinary was happening. Patterns of bioluminescent light danced in the darkness, forming complex geometric shapes that couldn't be random. "Are you recording this?" he asked softly, though his voice carried clearly through the vessel's comm system. "Every second," replied Karen Wright, the vessel's pilot. "The AI confirms these light patterns match the mathematical sequence we've been tracking for weeks." The research vessel hung suspended 3 kilometers beneath the planet's surface. Its lights were dimmed to avoid interfering with the beautiful display unfolding before them. More shapes appeared in the darkness. Circles within circles, spirals, and patterns that pulsed with meaning. "They're responding to our signals," Alan said, his excitement barely contained. "Those are the same prime number sequences we've been broadcasting." The ship's comm system crackled. "Research vessel Nautilus, this is Control. The Galactic Council observers are demanding an update. They're concerned about your proximity to the light sources." Alan smiled. After 6 months on Poseidon's Pearl, he was used to the Council representatives' nervous reactions to anything involving deep water. "Tell them we've just made first contact with an intelligent aquatic species, and tell them to watch their screens." The lights in the water shifted, forming new patterns. Shapes that looked like mathematical equations danced through the darkness. Then, slowly, the lights began to move closer to the vessel. Through the viewport, Alan could see a massive shape emerging from the darkness. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, a creature nearly as large as their vessel, with translucent skin that rippled with its own bioluminescent patterns. Multiple tentacle-like appendages moved with graceful precision, each one glowing with complex light patterns. "Hello," Alan whispered, though he knew the creature couldn't hear him through the water. Instead, he activated the ship's light array, programming it to repeat the mathematical sequence they'd been broadcasting. The creature paused, its body pulsing with soft blue light. Then, to their amazement, it changed color to match their signal exactly. More shapes appeared from the darkness, dozens of the creatures, all communicating through light and color. "Control, are you seeing this?" Karen asked, her voice full of wonder. "Affirmative. Nautilus. The Council observers are, well, they're speechless." Alan couldn't blame them. Here, in the deep waters they had feared for so long, they were witnessing something unprecedented, first contact with a species that had evolved in the very environment they had avoided. Over the next few hours, they established a basic form of communication with the creatures. Mathematics served as their common language, with light patterns growing increasingly complex as both sides learned to understand each other. "Dr. Patterson," the comm crackled again, The council representatives would like to know if these beings are dangerous. Aelin watched as the creatures danced through the water around their vessel, their lights forming patterns of stunning beauty and complexity. Tell them these beings have mastered living in an environment we're still learning to navigate. They could easily destroy our vessel if they wanted to. Instead, they're teaching us about pressure waves and deep-sea currents we never knew existed. He paused as new light patterns appeared, diagrams showing safer routes through the deep ocean currents, warning signs for dangerous pressure zones, and maps to rich mineral deposits. They're not just intelligent, he continued. They're advanced. They've been waiting for someone to notice them, to learn their language of light and mathematics. And because humans were willing to dive deep enough, we're the first to make contact. More creatures appeared from the darkness, their bodies forming a living light show that spelled out complex equations. Each pattern revealed new knowledge about surviving in the deep. The council species avoided water worlds out of fear, Alan said. But look what they missed. We're not just finding new worlds, we're finding new civilizations. And maybe, just maybe, we can help bridge the gap between the surface and the deep. As if understanding his words, the creatures began a new display, their lights forming a pattern that looked remarkably like a bridge spanning the darkness between two glowing spheres. Control, Alan said softly. Tell the council representatives we're going to need their help. There's a whole new form of diplomacy to develop here. It's time for all of us to learn how to swim in these waters. Captain Nicol Hayes stood in the testing chamber of the Aquatic Technology Center, watching as a Vexillian diplomat took his first steps in water. The alien moved slowly in the specially designed suit, his spindly limbs protected by flexible waterproof material that humans had developed just for his species. "You're doing great, Ambassador Rix," she said through the comm system. "The water is only chest deep for now. Remember your breathing exercises." The Vexillian's translator crackled with nervous laughter. Strange to think that human children do this without any special equipment. Behind Nicole, a team of engineers monitored the suit's systems. The testing pool was small, barely larger than a human swimming pool, but it represented something revolutionary. The first time a Vexillian had willingly entered water. "Ready to try the submersion test?" Nicole asked gently. She had learned that patience was essential when helping alien species overcome their fear of water. Rix's upper appendages twitched, but he nodded. Yes, for science, for progress. The pool's floor slowly lowered, allowing the water to rise above the Vexillian's head. The suit's systems activated automatically, creating a comfortable bubble of breathable air and regulated pressure around him. "Vital signs normal," reported Dan Miller from the monitoring station. "The suit is performing exactly as designed." Through the clear walls of the pool, they could see Rix turning slowly in the water, his movements becoming more confident as he realized the suit was protecting him perfectly. "This is remarkable," the ambassador said. "I feel almost weightless, yet completely safe." Nicole smiled. In the past year, her team had developed similar suits for 12 different species. Each design had to account for unique physiologies and environmental needs. The Meridians needed crystal-clear chambers to maintain their crystalline forms. The Nautilians required special pressure regulations to prevent their tentacles from tangling. "Ambassador," she said, "would you like to see something amazing?" At his agreement, she pressed a control panel. One wall of the testing chamber became transparent, revealing a massive aquarium beyond. Inside, representatives from 5 different alien species moved through the water in their specialized suits, studying a coral-like formation that Earth scientists had discovered on Europa. All of them were terrified of water just a few months ago, Nicole explained. Now they're conducting real research underwater. The Meridian scientists there just published a paper on deep-sea mineral formation. Rix moved closer to the window, watching his fellow aliens work. The council said this was impossible, that water worlds would always be off-limits to us. "Humans have a saying," Nicole replied. "The only impossible thing is convincing yourself something is impossible." She checked her tablet as new data came in. The Galactic Council had just approved funding for 3 more aquatic technology centers. Every major spacefaring race was now requesting water adaptation training. "Ready to try the propulsion system?" she asked Rix. The ambassador activated his suit's maneuvering jets, moving smoothly through the water. "This could change everything," he said. "All those worlds we avoided. All those resources we thought were forever out of reach. It's already changing things," Nicole said. She brought up a holographic display showing recent economic data. The first underwater mining operations using alien workers had just started on Europa. 3 water worlds previously classified as deadly had been approved for colony development. More importantly, the fear was fading. Young aliens were signing up for water training in record numbers. Some were even requesting to join human deep-sea research teams. The real breakthrough, Nicole continued, was realizing we didn't need to make the water less frightening. We just needed to help your people feel safe exploring it. A soft alarm chimed, indicating the end of the testing session. But Rix didn't move toward the exit. Instead, he activated his comm. "Control, I would like to stay in for a few more minutes," he said. "I want to try reaching the bottom of the pool." Nicole exchanged pleased looks with her team. This was how it always started. Curiosity overcoming fear, wonder replacing anxiety. One by one, the galaxy's species were learning to embrace the waters they had feared for so long. "Take all the time you need, Ambassador," she said. "The ocean isn't going anywhere. And neither are we." Jack Cooper walked through the underwater tunnel connecting the main hub of the Galactic Academy of Planetary Sciences to its newest addition, the Deep Ocean Research Wing. Students from a dozen different species followed him, each wearing their species-specific water protection suits. Their excited chatter in various languages filled the comm system. "As you can see," Jack said, gesturing to the transparent walls of the tunnel, "we've built this facility right on the edge of an oceanic trench. The depths here reach 7 kilometers. Zinri, a young Meridian student whose crystalline form sparkled in the facility's lights, pressed close to the clear wall. Outside, bioluminescent creatures danced in the dark waters. Just 6 months ago, most of these alien students wouldn't go near a pool. Now they were 2 kilometers underwater and loving it. "Professor Cooper," Tinry asked, "is it true that human children learn to swim before they can walk?" Jack laughed. "Not quite, but we do start very young. Speaking of which," he paused at a large viewport, showing them the training pool where a group of mixed species was practicing underwater movement. Human instructors guided aliens of various shapes and sizes through basic swimming motions. "Next week, each of you will begin practical water training," Jack continued. "But first, we need to understand why water worlds are so important to the galaxy's future." They entered a large circular chamber filled with holographic displays. Each screen showed a different water world, complete with data about its resources and unique properties. The students spread out, their suits allowing them to move easily through the room despite the water pressure outside. Before humans joined the Galactic Council, Jack explained, these planets were all classified as death worlds. Now, look at this. He activated a central hologram showing recent survey data. We've discovered 17 new forms of intelligent life in these oceans. The Europan microorganisms are revolutionizing medicine. The mineral wealth alone could power the galaxy's economy for centuries. A Nautilian student raised a tentacle. But isn't it dangerous? The pressure, the darkness. Life is always dangerous, Jack replied. Space is dangerous too. The trick isn't to avoid danger, it's to understand it and work with it. He led them to the practical demonstration area. Here, small groups of aliens practiced using underwater tools, conducted experiments with water pressure, and studied marine biology. Most importantly, they did it all together. Look around, Jack said. A year ago, none of your species would work near water. Now you're not just surviving underwater. You're thriving. You're making discoveries that will change the galaxy. Sinri moved to a research station, where a Vexillian and a human were studying water pressure effects on crystal formation. My parents thought I was crazy to enroll in this program, they said. Now they're asking me to teach them what I've learned. Jack nodded. This was happening across the galaxy. Young aliens were leading their species into a new era, breaking down fears that had limited their people for generations. Today's final lesson is practical, he announced. We're going to take a short submarine trip to the bottom of the trench. Anyone nervous? To his pleasure, not a single student backed out. They filed into the large submarine, chattering excitedly about what they might discover in the depths. Jack watched as they helped each other with safety checks, species that once barely interacted now working together smoothly. As the submarine descended into the darkness, Jack thought about how far they'd come. The facility had started with just 10 alien students brave enough to try. Now there was a waiting list hundreds of names long. Professor, called Sinri, we're picking up some unusual readings from the trench. Jack smiled. Every dive brought new discoveries, new chances for his students to prove their courage. The galaxy was changing, one brave soul at a time. And these students, once afraid of even a drop of water, were leading the way into humanity's world. Let's check it out, he said. After all, that's why we're here, to dive deep and find what others were too afraid to look for. Dr. Samantha Walsh stood once again before the Galactic Council, 5 years after her first presentation. The circular chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed. Where once the alien representatives had huddled away from images of water worlds, now they watched eagerly as holographic displays showed underwater colonies thriving across the galaxy. 5 years ago, Samantha began, I stood here and promised you that humans could help open the water worlds to all species. Today, I'm proud to present the results of that promise. She gestured to the central hologram, which showed the first all-alien deep-sea expedition team preparing for their mission. The 12 members represented 8 different species, each wearing their specialized underwater suits with the confidence of experienced divers. Ambassador Rix will lead the expedition, she announced, nodding to the Vexillian who had once been terrified of a swimming pool. Now he stood proudly in his water suit, his spindly limbs moving with easy grace in the protective gear. When humans first joined the council, Rix addressed the chamber. We thought they were mad to live underwater. Now we understand they were not mad. They were brave. They showed us how to be brave too. Samantha brought up new data streams. In 5 years, we've established 47 mixed species underwater colonies. The Europan Research Center has registered over 300 new patents for underwater technology. Trade in deep-sea resources has boosted the galactic economy by 30%. The chamber filled with appreciative murmurs. A Meridian representative's crystalline form glowed with pleasure patterns as they added, and let us not forget the cultural exchange. My own daughter now studies marine biology with humans. But our greatest achievement, Samantha continued, isn't measured in numbers. She switched the hologram to show something that would have been impossible 5 years ago. Alien children playing in an underwater park, their protection suits almost forgotten as they chased each other through gentle currents. We didn't just teach you to survive underwater, she said. You learned to live there, to make it your home. And in doing so, you've taught us too. She showed clips of alien scientists improving human diving technology, of mixed species teams developing new underwater farming techniques, of alien artists creating beautiful structures that worked with water currents in ways humans had never imagined. The real breakthrough, Zixtel spoke up from his position on the council, was when we stopped seeing water as an enemy to be feared. The humans showed us it could be a friend to be understood. Samantha nodded, which brings us to today's announcement. The Council has approved the establishment of the first interspecies underwater university. Every spacefaring race will contribute their knowledge, their technology, and their unique perspective on living with water. The chamber erupted in applause. Even species that still preferred dry land had come to appreciate the importance of understanding water worlds. The university would ensure that future generations grew up without the ancient fears that had held their ancestors back. But perhaps, Samantha said as the chamber quieted, our most important discovery was about ourselves. She brought up one final image, a group photo of humans and aliens together on an underwater expedition, all of them clearly comfortable and happy despite being kilometers beneath the surface. We learned that fear only stops us if we let it, that working together makes us stronger than working alone, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do is refuse to try something new. As if to prove her point, the chamber's main viewport suddenly revealed the scene outside. They were underwater, the council chamber having been slowly submerged during her presentation. Some representatives gasped, but no one panicked. Instead, they watched in wonder as schools of bioluminescent creatures danced past the window. "Welcome," Samantha said with a smile, "to the new Galactic Council underwater headquarters. The future isn't just on the surface anymore. It's anywhere we dare to go, as long as we go there together." The chamber filled with cheers and applause, the sound carrying clearly through water that had once inspired only fear. Outside, the lights of underwater cities sparkled like stars in the deep, a testament to how far they'd come and how far they could still go.